Was Jonah Hill being abusive with his girlfriend, with these boundaries, this controversy? We're going to go into part two with Dr. Kirk Honda again right now.
Sharing this publicly now because keeping it to myself was causing more mental damage to myself than sharing it could ever do. Sarah then posted a cropped photo saying, "I'm feeling good. So far, mostly just relief and validation is what's coming out of this, but yes, true audience is getting bigger. Yet somehow I continue to feel less turmoil and more relief. Maybe because I already have been through being with a celebrity and all the public attention that comes with that. IDK," she continued. "The past year and a half people have been curious, and I've still been protecting him. Now I never have to ever again. I feel like now I'm allowed to be honest with others and myself, and before I didn't feel like I was allowed to. Honestly, been so much happier since I started sharing and not too spooked by all the public attention." Sarah then posted a cropped photo of Jonah saying, "Even the person I loved and shared a bed with uses me and can't just be like, yeah, you were super nice." Jonah then continued to say, "It hurt so badly, but I'm done apologizing. I was so lovely to you."
She says gaslight much. It's another term that people use a lot. It's actually possible, if we did assess the full relationship based on the little bit that we've seen, that gaslighting might have actually occurred in terms of the clinical definition. But anyway, allegedly this is Jonah saying this to Sarah. "Even the person I loved and shared a bed with," I think meaning Sarah, "uses me. You use me, Sarah, and you can't just be like, yeah, you were super nice. It hurts so badly, but I'm done apologizing. I was so lovely to you." So I'm not seeing any evidence of gaslighting so much. I mean, maybe if we heard from Sarah's like, well, in the context of this or that, then maybe I'd be convinced. But that certainly isn't some sort of slam dunk indication of abuse and gaslighting. It just looks like typical texting when you're breaking up. It kind of looks like they're breaking up, and so he's angry and upset and saying like, wow, even though we once loved each other, I think is what he's saying, you can't just say goodbye amicably or something, and who knows what the context there is, but that's kind of what it looks like to me.
So she's accusing him of gaslighting, and then has this snippet of him really maybe not acting beautifully, but sharing part of his heart. So gaslighting, narcissism, we hear these words thrown around so much. Even in the previous text, she said such and such, the audience is growing. Part of this is that she feels validated for how she's been feeling. And also saying that she's been, what was it, protecting him for a year and a half. And now it's coming out. And then the snippet of gaslighting that she, I don't know, used Canva to put together. It looks like a middle school project or something. But yeah, this is something that accusation labels are thrown around so harshly toward the end of a relationship. And the men that we work with want to be amazing men. They want to be amazing fathers and leaders, not only for their family, but in their community and the world. And to have their wife, the woman that they've loved for so long and kept so close to their heart, accuse them and label them in these ways, it's really disheartening. It's really difficult. Not that that doesn't happen sometimes, but so often now it's the pop psychology, gaslighting, narcissism. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, to be on the other side of that, to feel that, to be on the side of someone labeling who you are is excruciating for anyone. Because I think it also, when someone's casting a label on you, it's almost, to me, it feels like you're being put in a box where there's not nuance, there aren't feelings, there aren't deeper reasons. But beside that, when you said like men like often get confused after this relationship, all of a sudden they're receiving these labels. Something that hit me too is when she said, I was protecting you this past year. And I've observed too, that's often a shocking thing for men, the masculine, to hear, because he wasn't aware how much women can swim in the gray area of things. And when women are wanting the togetherness of either a romantic relationship or we're friends, they're going to preserve that at all costs, and they're kind of going to bend around the situation. And when they suddenly decide to stop doing that, maybe because they're not getting what they want out of it, then comes some of these other types of labeling, like, well, I was protecting you and now I'm not going to protect you anymore. And I can imagine that's incredibly confusing, because what was she not being honest? Was she not telling the truth? That's probably a pretty foreign concept.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm him, I'm thinking, well, first of all, I didn't ask you to protect me. So how condescending is that? And what are you protecting me from? The world from me? Like, what is this? What is this theater that I'm being cast in? It often feels like, as a man, right? We aren't going to know all sides of this, and we're only seeing ridiculously small snippets that she's releasing, right? So who knows? But that's what I have felt in that spot. That's what many men have felt in that spot. Like, are you kidding me? This is something I've put my whole heart and life into, and now I'm being cast as the villain in this theater. It's incredibly painful.
Plain and simple, if you need surfing with men, boundaryless friendships with.
Okay, so this is the main text that I have seen before. People have sent it to me. So this was December 2nd, 2021. So it looks like maybe in the middle of their relationship. So what this is, I believe, is Jonah Hill as a part of an ongoing fight that they're having. And the amount of text we're seeing, it just seems like it was a bit of maybe an obsession for him, a bit of a major trigger for him. And, you know, I know enough about Jonah Hill to know that he has been body shamed throughout his career. So that could be a part of it. It doesn't justify.
I mean, to say this is an obsession seems a bit much. It's like so guys, don't use text to try to translate emotional conversations. All right. Not only because they can be used later on like this, unfortunately, but it doesn't come across well. She can't feel your inflection, see your body language. Yeah. So do you have any thoughts on that in particular? I just wanted to jump in and say the word obsessive here. I don't know if Mr. Dr. Kirk Honda knows more than we do about this, but it's sort of piling on without really knowing all the pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah. And another downside I see to texting is Jonah is being very logical and list oriented here. And all that's going to do to the feminine on the other side is convince her that you don't understand, you don't get it. You know, she was trying to like respect your feelings, but this is the world of logic, and it's going to do nothing to prove the masculine point of view and everything to prove the feminine point of view, that she's right, she was wronged, and now she has a right to kind of blast this out on the internet and receive validation of why this was so difficult.
Yeah. Well, in a larger way, what we teach is when you're in communication, you want to be in a high mood, something of a positive mood, of a mood of appreciation, of gratitude, of some type of future vision that has a positive spin on it to some capacity. Otherwise, if you're communicating, man or woman, over text is even worse. If you're communicating when you're in a bad spot and it looks like he's trying to, I mean, in this text, it does look like he's clubbing her over the head with some of these things, certainly. Yeah. So let's keep watching.
It, but it could be a part of the reason as to what this is all about for him. Who knows? And certainly we have a fat-phobic society, so it's not hard to imagine what he's been through, even independent of being a celebrity. But anyway, it looks like this is a list of things that he is saying you shouldn't be doing in our relationship because it's wrong and you're a bad person for doing it. I think what's happening is that Jonah Hill is jealous and worried about losing her to someone else and is in a wrong, immoral way using control as a solution to that rather than what I was saying earlier. But okay, surfing with men, I think, meaning you shouldn't be surfing with men in a public area. Boundaryless, inappropriate friendships with men. Boundaryless, inappropriate friendships with men. Boundaryless, inappropriate. So who knows what that means? I'm going to take a guess and say that at least Sarah would say, I just have some friends that are men, but there's nothing boundaryless or inappropriate about it at all. There's also a possibility.
Okay. Like, he has no idea what Sarah's going to say. Like that. I found that interesting. I could say Jonah might have thought that she was doing things that crossed the relationship line. Boundaryless, inappropriate friendships with men may be something he finds inappropriate. And that's his right. It doesn't mean that she needs to abide by that, but his right to speak up about this. So I find it interesting that Mr. Dr. Kirk Honda seems to read her mind. He seems to think he reads her mind. Let's keep going.
That if we knew the full picture, that Jonah's complaint here might have some merit to it or something, who knows? But I'm going to take a guess and say that Jonah is being distorted in this, but there's no data. To model, see, if you need to model, if you need to post pictures of yourself in a bathing suit. So, if you need to post sexual pictures, what does he mean by that? If you need friendships with women who are in unstable places and from your wild recent past beyond getting a lunch or coffee or something respectful, yeesh. So I don't know, but this has some major red flags of the typical abusive profile where the abusive perpetrator will prevent and limit or highly modify the victim's relationships. Sometimes it's so severe that the victim ends up having no relationships. They're completely cut off from their family and their friends, and they don't work away from the home. But in the beginning, it can kind of look like this. I don't know if that's what this is, but it doesn't look good at the very least. But
like we talked about in last video, these are things, most of these things are that she'd been doing before. She's been surfing with men. She's had friends in the past with, I don't know what unstable places means and all this, but these are her friends. She's posted pictures in the past. She's been in bathing suits in the past. So to ask her to change that way, as we talked about last video, it's almost as though he just looked past who she was. He just looked at this ideal that he had in his mind of who he wanted her to be, maybe. And now that she's continuing to be herself, he's in conflict with that. What have you seen there as far as, well, the other side as well, women hoping that a man would change? What are you seeing behind the curtain here?
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime men or women are hoping the other will change drastically, as in their basic moral compass, or what they consider respectful, or what their values are in relationship, hoping that somehow they can influence them to change, either side, a person's going to feel like who they are is not wanted. They're going to feel, especially a woman, if a man's doing, expecting that from her, she can feel like that becomes very pushy and it's not wanting who she is. And then that often results in like, I want space from this. And something that also hit me was, even though if I were to know all the specific details, I might agree with Jonah that lunch or coffee is more respectful than another activity Laura might have been doing. It's casting his values onto her as if it's universal values. There's a universal idea of what a respectful activity is. And if that doesn't line up with you as a woman, like what she is wanting, what she values, that will feel like way too much pressure. It will feel suffocating, or it will make her feel very angry. Or if she has a lot of old history with receiving that kind of energy, she can kind of go into people-pleasing mode, try to meet your expectations of what respectful is. And then when she doesn't and it all falls apart, then might come out this more spiteful side of her that's saying, see, this is why you as a man are abusive. And I'm going to share this with as much as the public as I can.
Well, that's an incredibly hard spot to be in, of course, is maybe you met when you were young. This is different. They've been dating, I don't know, a year and a half at this point. And again, this is a year and a half ago. But many men have been with their woman for a long time, decades, and they've both discovered themselves along the way, right? And so if a man is trying, don't try to uphold boundaries over text, guys, like this, okay? We teach this in a totally different way that's actually effective. But yeah, for her to feel like he's abusing her and for her to come out in this way is just a nightmare for a guy, of course. It's even more so after a long relationship with kids.
In the bottom, he's like, if you need to do these things, then I'm not the right partner for you. So who knows? But if it was a pattern in this relationship for him to use breaking up with her as a control device, which is somewhat common in abusive relationships. And I also don't want you to have friendships with women who are in unstable places. So what's the problem with that? So I'm guessing that Jonah Hill was insecure and worried that Sarah, his girlfriend, would be influenced by other friends who are wanting to party and go out all night and meet men or something. And he was worried that he was going to lose Sarah if she hung out with them. And that's okay to have that worry, but you can't tell her that she can't have friendships. That's abusive.
Jonah then continued saying,
So we're seeing the word boundaries again. He says, allegedly, I'm not the right partner for you if you want to have friends and surf with men. If these things bring you to a place of happiness, I support it, and there will be no hard feelings. Okay? So that could be some kind of passive-aggressive statement or not. Could be a genuine one. These are my boundaries for romantic partnership. Okay, so there's a world in which Jonah Hill could say and have said that I have a problem with jealousy and I beg of you, even though this is totally wrong, it's not in the text, but I'll just allow for this possibility to have been discussed in this way at times anyway, that he could say, I have a problem with my attachments, traumas, and with jealousy, and it's so unfair that I'm doing this to you, but if you could please not do X, Y, and Z. And if that can't be accommodated, I don't know if this is going to work because I'm just going to be constantly in pain.
Well, okay. So I really see this as two totally different sides of one camp. So one side is some posting pictures in a bathing suit, surfing with men, going out with her friends. These are things that she's been doing. So to ask her to change is either naive or blind in his part, or really self-centered, let's say, in his part. Again, maybe projecting this idea of her. Okay, cool. The other side is if she's going out and she's going to go like party and get trashed in unsafe places and bars, let's say late at night, when maybe that's not something that she was necessarily doing before, or maybe she only did that with other bad influences. Like, let's not pretend that some people aren't bad influences.
Sure.
Okay. So let's say this is a new thing and he's saying, hey, it's not okay to go out late at night and get trashed, blackout drunk, and not let me know where you are. That caused me fear. That caused me anxiety. I'm not there to protect you. I don't know where you are. Like, that's not okay with me. He doesn't need to start with like, I have a problem with jealousy in the past and I'm so sorry, but could you not go drink till 3 a.m. and like that? Like, it doesn't need. So yes, some of these things he shouldn't have brought up. I agree. They're water under the bridge at the very least, or this is part of who she is. But then there's other things that maybe he does, and it doesn't need to be prefaced. I want you to know, it doesn't need to be prefaced with like, I'm so sorry about my jealousy. I'm so sorry because I'm a nice guy and I need to hedge that I'm standing up for a boundary in relationship. Yeah. And tell me your thoughts there. I mean, let's start with picking one thing that's truly a hill, a boundary that you're willing to die on, a hill you're willing to die on, versus, hey, there's this laundry list, and coming with the such and such isn't okay with me in relationship. It caused me anxiety. I wasn't able to be there to protect you. How does all of that come across to you?
Yeah, I mean, when I hear that in my more feminine energy of it you use a man, it was cause anxiety and I wasn't there to protect you. Sure, in popular culture, you might have women say, well, I don't need anyone to protect me. But evolutionarily, deep in that more receptive feminine energy that loves to be in partnership. And one of the reasons why women tend to be attracted to masculinity is because it will throw itself on the spear. It will protect her. It will, the neighboring tribe comes by threatening her life, he will, as her partner, step out and protect her. So that is actually incredibly honoring of her and their relationship space. And to pick one thing, and then even if she has she's not happy with that one hill that the boundaries on, that's what's been chosen. And then you bring it up again, and you bring it up again, and that consistently, it gives her femininity a chance to really feel into what you're asking, the real reason why you're not trying to control her. And then she also will feel that you're not going to budge on this. And actually, that can build in a woman a lot of respect for the man that she's with, versus when I, hear Dr. Honda's like kind of hedging, like, I have this problem with jealousy. There's nothing in my feminine body that respects that. I mean, again, I get it. We're all human, but it's a like limper feeling again, versus, wow, this is a man that really wants to stand with me in the storm in this relationship.
Yeah, thank you. And if you as a man bring up something again and again in a calm way, and her actions don't shift, then you know where you stand. You know where she believes the relationship stands. You know where she stands as far as your boundary, how much she cares about your boundary. And maybe she does not. And then therefore, maybe you're not right to be together, right? If a wife wants to open the marriage to other sexual partners, and he says, no, that's not okay with me, and she continues to bring it up, let's say, and he's saying, no, I won't continue in a relationship if we do that, and she won't let it go, and whether openly or not, you know where she stands on the relationship, and then you can make choices of your own. So it's not that she has to do what you say, of course, but it's to truly pick a boundary, if there is one. If there's something you need to speak up about, it's got to be a hill that you're ultimately willing to die on. Otherwise, it's not really a boundary. Mm-hmm. Okay. She doesn't want to hear you complain, for instance, or whine. If you speak up in this way, it's because it's a hill you're willing to die on.
I'm working on it in therapy, and I'll get there eventually, but it's just too much of a trigger for me. A more common issue along these lines would be that you have infidelity in your past, maybe even in the relationship that you're currently working on. And as the victim of the infidelity, you are worried that your partner is going to cheat again. And every time you look at the person on their phone texting someone, it re-triggers you, and you're like, oh, are they texting someone and they're going to cheat on me? And you can have conversations, and I've had these conversations with clients where they make arrangements where the perpetrator of the infidelity, or maybe even just a partner who's never cheated, but cares about say you in the past had a partner that cheated on you quite a lot, and your new partner you're displacing and worried that they are going to cheat on you. And you ask, hey, is it okay if I can look at your phone every now and then? I know that's an invasion of privacy, and if that's a deal breaker, then
So I disagree with pandering to a person's insecurity if it's happened in a previous relationship. And so if you as a man have insecurities that aren't to do with this woman that's right in front of you, this isn't fair to her or the relationship for you to bring that up there. This is for you to go to take care of in therapy and coaching on your own, with journaling, exercise, prayer, goals, internal work with your therapist or coach. This isn't for you to bring to your partner who had nothing to do with the previous situation and say, hey, I'm so sorry, this isn't fair, but could you do this overly kid glove thing for me that is basically inappropriate, but could you do it for me? I don't think it's not fair to her to ask that. It's not going to be helpful for the relationship. It's not going to help you as a man resolve the true problems of your insecurity. That's to be done, with a coach or with the therapist, or, on your own, or in our groups or in our forums. That's where that's to be done. Let's keep going.
I won't do it, and I'll figure out some other way, but it would really help if I could just reassure myself and look at your phone every now and then. Given my phobias and given my place in my healing, it would really help if I could do that.
Given my past, given my phobias, can I please invade your privacy and look at your phone at random times because of my own past insecurities?
Yeah, I want to have like deep compassion, but that just felt awful, especially that, like, because of my phobias, I can't help myself. That feel okay, I get it, and that feels like not fully taking ownership of one's self. It feels like kind of hiding behind this blanket term that's trying to coat over how shameful and embarrassing I'm sure this is for him, that this is a fear of his. And I'm sure it makes him feel more of a failure in relationship, maybe even less of a man. And that's what I feel beneath that.
When he brings that to her.
Yeah. And he uses these broad basing terms like, these are my phobias, I can't help it. All I end up feeling is he's really not owning underneath.
Yeah.
Now, do you have the right to force your partner to do that? No, it's an invasion of their privacy, but certainly those arrangements can be made. And for some partners, they'll be like, yeah, sure, go ahead and look at my phone. Or the partner's like, yeah, no, I don't want you looking at my phone. I'm not cheating on you, but that's just going too far. Is there something else I can do to reassure you? So I'll allow for the possibility that those conversations happened. It doesn't look like those happened, but then he says, those are the boundaries for romantic partnership. My boundaries with you based on the ways these actions have hurt our trust. So as these actions have hurt our trust. So I think what he's saying is the reason why I'm having these quote unquote boundaries, or the reason why I'm controlling your behavior is a more accurate term, is because you have hurt me in the past by doing these things. And so I have the right, I'm entitled to impose these rules on you because I've been triggered in the past.
If you ever say to your woman, I'm not the right partner for you, you better be like leaving the relationship as you say that. All right. This ultimatums, threats, if that's how we see this, because he's going back and forth between, hey, these things aren't okay with me, I'm not the right partner for you, and then back to trust violations and all this stuff. It's like reading her the riot act kind of here. And I don't know if his intention is to be done with the relationship, but it sure better be, I would think, if he's saying these kind of things. So I'm not the right partner for you unless you do XYZ for me. Have you been in that spot? Have you coached women in that spot? What does that feel like?
Yeah, I mean, I think claiming your worth, claiming what kind of partnership you're worthy of having is a really powerful thing. And the way it's presented in this text is it doesn't feel like a solid. I don't hear in Jonah's words him even acknowledging in himself what he knows he's worth or what partnership means to him. It feels like he's still kind of hoping that his words are going to change Laura's behaviors, and then he will kind of get that gratification of, I set a boundary, she came back to me, this kind of reassures me of who I am and what I'm worth, which is kind of the back door of him really claiming it first. And when you are, whether you're a man or a woman, and you feel you know what you're worth and you know what kind of relationship you're worth, it doesn't matter if the person you're with, slips away or there has to be a separation, because what is the most powerful thing in the moment is your truth, and your truth has nothing to do with their truth. And your truth has nothing to do with trying to convince them of your truth.
It's hard to know, but it kind of looks like he gets triggered by things, which is fine, but his solution is to see it as a hurt.
Okay, it's not fine that he gets triggered by things. Okay, it's not. So that's your own work to do as well.
Not a him problem. And now he is saying that as an excuse to control her, because nothing on that list refers to or is in the direction of actual infidelity or actually losing the relationship, right? It's just her social and professional activities, her recreational activities. So there's nothing in there that is inherently threatening to the relationship. So yikes. Now, if something on the list was there of just like, you can't get super drunk and hang out with your ex-boyfriend because remember that one time you got together with him, something like that, you can imagine a boundary.
There we go. That's exactly, of course, what I was talking about earlier. If it's a particular thing that's a hill you're willing to die on, then yes.
around, and us as an audience looking at it might be able to relate to it, but nothing on this list. I mean, modeling, posting pictures of herself in a bathing suit, she has the right to do that. One, two, she is a surfer, so that's just a part of the situation. But even if she wasn't a surfer, like, she can do whatever she wants with her social media. To post sexual pictures, what does that mean exactly? There's a lot of evidence that he is imposing too much control and not taking responsibility for his own jealousy and insecurity.
She then posted another screenshot of Jonah Hill saying, "Literally just say hello and leave the convo. I love how your therapist thinks I suck. I'm literally the best boyfriend on earth."
Okay, so sounds like Sarah was also in therapy, and there's an interesting dynamic in happening. Someone should make a movie about this, actually, where, and maybe there already is a movie, where each partner is in individual therapy and each therapist gets triangulated into the relationship and has a distorted view based on the partner that is in therapy with them. And they end up in fight, like you could have a rom-com where the two therapists see each other and, oh, that's my client's partner's therapist. I have a bone to pick with that therapist, because, you'll hear these things. A client will come to me and say, my wife's therapist says that you're wrong and that they're right. And so that'll happen. And as a therapist, you have to learn how to navigate that. So you could have a rom-com where the two therapists see each other and then, hijinks ensue, and then they end up getting married themselves. But yeah, so it sounds like for Sarah, by implication, was saying, I love how your therapists think I suck. So meaning that Sarah went to Jonah and said something like, my therapist believes, or something along these lines, or I had a talk with my therapist and we collaboratively agreed that what you're doing is unfair, something like that.
Yeah, so let's just call this out right now. To say, I love how your therapist thinks I suck is like a whiny kind of punk thing to say. I mean, that's ridiculous. And then, I'm literally the best boyfriend in the world. When someone says out loud, oh, I don't lie, I'm not a liar, I'm truthful in everything. Right? And I tend to think they're not being truthful. Or, I'm the best boyfriend in the world. Like, who are you trying to convince here? Yeah, but your therapist thinks I suck. Now, okay, earlier, and you've been very phenomenal to say, like, this has been painful and you have an open heart for both of them. And I agree. Of course, he's a human and I care for him and he's in a painful spot. But this back and forth over texting, I hope this is an example of what not to do. Certainly, is all this emotional texting back and forth. Now, I've been in the spot where things were going wrong around me, and I fell into the victim mentality and thought, it felt kind of empowering to, like, oh, I'm such a victim, or yeah, I suck. This passive aggressive, right? Like, over the top, being inflammatory about the situation, because really there's despair underneath. And so I can understand his despair. But guys, if you feel in a bad mood, depressed, in sort of a desperation kind of place, if you feel lonely, put the phone down and don't text. Mm-hmm. Okay. I hope that you learn from this.
And he says, literally just say hello and leave the convo. Who knows what that means? I love how your therapists think I suck. I literally am the best boyfriend on earth. Okay. Yeah, it's right. Well, I'll use it as a jumping off point. I've treated perpetrators who will say things along these lines, where the refusal to admit that they're wrong, the distorted view that they're the best partner, the semi-gaslighting aspect of that, of you'll never find someone better than me, you don't deserve someone better than me, what about your past exes, they were worse than me, we all agree upon that, so therefore you should just put up with whatever I'm doing because by comparison I'm better than other people, is it's interesting. So I don't know if that's what we're seeing, or we're just seeing two people having a fight or breaking up. I mean, the average breakup, non-abusive breakup, will have texts like this, so it's hard to tell. I feel like we can make some conclusions based on what we're seeing. Now, it's possible it's doctored, right? But if it's not, then I think we can make some conclusions. We don't know the full picture, but I think we can say that it looks like Jonah was, given his issues with jealousy and insecurity, was resorting to control, and that she was trying to accommodate that, and did accommodate a lot of it by taking the pictures down. I think we can look at that and conclude that is likely what happened. That is not the full story. That doesn't explain the whole thing. But it's hard to imagine a viable explanation or context that would justify that. I mean, even if she cheated on him, right? That saying who she can be friends with, right, is not okay. And Jonah should know that, or his therapist should help him with that, or something. And maybe the therapist did help him, but he went off script or something. Jonah did. I don't know. So I think we can conclude some things. Does that mean that he should be canceled or not? I don't know. It really puts Jonah Hill in this weird position. I guess it's another layer here, which is, okay, fine, you're Sarah and you felt abused and maybe were in this way. And we don't hear any allegations of physical abuse or things along those lines. So not that emotional abuse and verbal abuse can't be very abusive and very harmful, because it can be sometimes more harmful than physical abuse. But the extent of what we're seeing, I'll just give my own clinical opinion on this, that I've treated perpetrators of varying degrees. And the things that I'm hearing, if it's the full story, I would have put this perpetrator profile as being extremely mild. A problem and abusive and needs to change, but not nearly in the same category as a lot of the other perpetrators that I've treated. People who beat people regularly, who have actively gaslit and the gaslighting has worked. People who for 20 years will prevent the victim from having any relationships outside. We don't have to rank things. It's not like some people are more victimized by but
Sarah, who dated Jonah between 2021 and 2022, opens up on her Instagram story, writing, "Someone being an emotionally abusive partner doesn't mean they're a terrible person, often stems from their own trauma. And at the same time, it doesn't mean it's okay."
Okay, so by the way, this video is from E! News on YouTube. And okay, this is an interesting post. Someone being an emotionally abusive partner doesn't mean they're a terrible person. It often stems from their own trauma. And at the same time, it doesn't mean it's okay. That's a very wise post. Yeah, I'll often be saying this exactly, so that's good that she put that out there.
Sarah reflects in her Instagram story, quote, "This is high-key so embarrassing. I did this all in the name of protecting him from crippling anxiety."
Okay, that's interesting that she made this post, allegedly. She's saying, I did this all in the name of protecting him from crippling anxiety. So that was my impression, that was my guess, was that given that he's in therapy and he has maybe some self-awareness, that he or she, but maybe him, would have said, look, I have crippling anxiety, and part of the solution to that is you can't post those kinds of things. And if you don't listen to me on this, then you're a bad partner, because of the panic that he'd be experiencing. The anxiety in particular, I'm guessing, is attachment anxiety.
I mean, if he did that, if he told her that ahead of time, hey, due to my attachment anxiety from childhood and my trauma, I sometimes have anxiety, sometimes even crippling anxiety. So I'm asking you to do these things. Then I feel bad for him that she's airing all of this out. So if I give Dr. Kirkanda the benefit of the doubt here that maybe he did say these kind of things and really owned up to anxiety, then for her to put hashtag get whipped and like she's protecting him in some way by airing this out now, I mean, that's disingenuous. We don't know, of course, the two different sides of this, but if he did speak up for his own self in that way, it says something about this whole scenario that we, as we teach as well, to come forward and to put your own, let's say, baggage onto the relationship and onto your woman. What does that feel like? She felt like she needed to protect him during this time. And what is that like when a man may put something like that on the relationship in such a way?
Yeah, it gets really tricky, because I can say both men and women can be very empathic beings, meaning that they can pick up on the energy of another. But let's say that women biologically tend to do that even more. Even Jonah coming to her and just stating, hey, I have these things, and these things. And he comes like almost unloading the weight of his anxiety into her arms, which probably is not just pure anxiety. It probably carries a good glob of guilt.
Sure.
It probably carries a big pot of like shame. it probably carries a lot of self-judgment. Even though he may have thought he worked through that, she's not going to feel words so much. She's going to feel the energy behind what, he's sharing. And so she's all of a sudden has guilt and shame and worry that binds with her own. And over time, if a woman's constantly kind of being handed that into her lap, feeling like she kind of has to mother her partner and just is stuck having to feel his shame, his guilt, his self-judgment with her own, eventually she's going to project it back that he's the one that caused her to feel that way. And then what other label can she put to feeling so yucky? Well, she's going to pull out from popular culture, whatever is a popular label at the moment. And then you get things like he was emotionally abusive. Why? Because it felt emotionally crappy for her. Not that he was abusing her with his words, his actions, but that she was left feeling the emotional baggage of it.
That's really well said. Yeah, thank you.
So from this post, it looks like maybe that was a conversation between the two of them. It doesn't make it okay if someone has anxiety, attachment anxiety, panic, that doesn't give them the right to abuse and control another human being.
The pro surfer also posted a screenshot of a conversation with a friend describing the alleged, quote, psychological abuse she endured, writing in part, having been recently diagnosed with bipolar type 1 disorder, towards the end of the relationship, when he was running out of ways to manipulate me, he started questioning my sanity and my medications.
It's just detail. I don't know if there's much to add to my conceptualization, but she, I think, is disclosing she was diagnosed with bipolar, and that toward the end of the relationship, when he was running out of ways to manipulate me, he started questioning my sanity and my medications. So that is along the lines of actual gaslighting, right? And it's hard to know. I've heard people say these things, and then when I investigate it, it wouldn't be the way I would describe it. So it's hard to say exactly what.
Okay, so she had a recent bipolar diagnosis. Okay, I'll just press play. We'll keep going.
Sarah says that she decided to speak out about Jonah now because keeping it to myself was causing more damage to my mental health than sharing it could ever do.
Having said that, what I said earlier, given what we saw in the text exchange, if accurate, it wouldn't be counter to what we saw before for Jonah to engage in something along those lines, where he, in his effort to gain control as a solution to his anxiety, his attachment anxiety, he would maybe even see things, not lie to Sarah, but literally be distorted or desperate enough to convince himself that her diagnosis of bipolar or the medications that she was on somehow made it so that she was a problem and was more likely to cheat or leave him or think things that were against him. Say maybe she entered into a depressive episode.
Yeah, I mean, if she's mentally unstable, again, we're not going to know all sides of this. It's starting to go off the rails here pretty quick when all of a sudden she has a brand new, quite severe mental illness diagnosis. But we'll just,
It's like adding more layers to the multi-layered cake.
And by the way, there was a clown in the room the whole time. Hold on. What are we talking about now? So let's keep going. We'll finish up.
Episode, and was looking at the relationship very negatively. And he knows that and even talks with her clinician and she would even say, look, I'm depressed right now, so I'm going to see things differently or whatever. And she is pushing back on these so-called boundaries and saying, I don't like what you're doing. I don't want to do this anymore. You don't have the right to control me in that way. And he could twist that. Again, this is all speculation. There's no data to back this up, but I see a world in which he could see that, her asserting herself, asserting her rights as a result of her bipolar and maybe meds or mood or something, and says, oh, you're only doing that because you're depressed and you're bipolar, you're not on the right meds, or you don't have the right therapist. And you rinse and repeat that enough times, and if you're Sarah, you might end up being convinced, like, oh, maybe it is my moods.
with a new diagnosis, like if there's like all of a sudden you have depression you haven't ever experienced before, and you go to seek treatment in a therapist's office or attend a group, there's often this encouragement that one find the seed to their discontent. And it's kind of the human condition that all of us, when we're in a place of misery, want to find the thing that's wrong, because if we find it and obliterate it, or find it and blast it out into the world, we'll be free. We won't have to feel this anymore. So maybe the mental stuff she's going through is an accumulation over years and time from childhood. But it also could be like this, I need to now tell what happened with Jonah. That's why I'm telling the world, because it was like, well, this is the seed of why I've been feeling so awful. And if I just get this out, then I'll be free and I won't feel so uncomfortable and I won't feel this depressive episode. So that even though I feel deeply for what she's going through, that makes me really suspicious of maybe even well-intended. She's trying to make herself feel better, but her reasoning for suddenly bringing this out a year later.
Given what we saw in the text exchange, and if that's just the tip of the iceberg, and if we're reading it right, which we can't really know, then yeah, it would take a while to recover emotionally. It gets under your skin. And if she was abused in that way, then I'm glad that she was able to get the help and that she was able to recover.
Sarah later shares a message for Jonah, who welcomed a baby with girlfriend Olivia Miller earlier this year, writing, "I hope my ex has a daughter. Maybe she'll turn him into a real feminist." She continues, "Because the fact that he calls himself a feminist now is laughable."
Yeah. I hope he has a daughter and she's a feminist and turns him into a feminist. Yeah, this is just totally for her healing. She has no agendas behind this whatsoever. This isn't for any kind of external validation anyway, or to get her name out there. She is a professional surfer, and does have, a mental health diagnosis. And so, yeah, what else would you like to say? I don't have anything more to say on this. It's painful for him. I don't think this should have been aired out to the public. Whether he was inappropriate or not is something between them and other professionals. And, I think this is incredibly painful for him personally, especially if he was open about these things with her, which he probably was. So, man, he's got healing to do after this. And so does she have healing to do. She believes that this was abusive. At this point, whether, it literally was or not is moot, because she believes that it was. Right. And that's a painful spot for everyone that's had a relationship that this reminds them of in any capacity.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me too, her last comment. It's so easy for women to kind of get together, and it's because they have their language and their emotional language, their way of relating to one another. It's very easy to then take the other that maybe doesn't relate in the same way or act the same way or seem to follow the same rules of social agreement and call them, and in this case, men or masculinity, abusive. And then I would say I've also experienced sometimes when men get together and it's like, well, we know the right social contracts. We know how it's respectful to communicate. And it's the same thing looking over here. Why are women so self-absorbed and selfish and full of themselves? So I think there's a need to step lightly between all these labels, to have perspective on what causes us personal pain. It doesn't necessarily mean the opposite sex is doing anything wrong. To recognize that we do have different ways that we think is the right way to communicate. And then if you're a woman and you're in a relationship and that's not working for you, there are ways to work through that, and a man, vice versa. But in this particular situation, it's really hard to find the bad one, the bad guy. And it makes me sad how quickly and easily it is to pigeonhole someone into that when that doesn't really help heal the wound deeply and in time for the next relationship that comes around.
Yeah, thank you. So what do you think? Post in the comments. Have you had a situation like this happen before? What would you have done? If you want to get a hold of us, check out our stuff in the description. The link's there, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks, Cynthia.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.